The United States sanctions traders and ships managers involved in financing Houthi militia. International reports warn that the war in Ukraine could push millions of children globally into hunger. The U.S. administration mobilizes international efforts to increase humanitarian aid to Yemen. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swalem. The U.S. government has slapped sanctions on more than a dozen companies and people it claims are involved in a commodity trading scheme to finance the Houthi rebels in Yemen. This step comes in line with international efforts to pressure Houthis to stop their war against Yemenis and come back to the negotiating table. The following report has more details.
The U.S. government has sanctioned more than a dozen organizations and individuals it believes are participating in a commodity trading scheme to fund Yemen's Houthi militia. According to the U.S. Treasury, a network managed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps transferred tens of millions of dollars to Yemen through a complicated network of intermediaries in support of the Houthis' operations. The network has generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue with the aid of a diverse array of international commodity traders, the Treasury Department said in a statement. Since the onset of a full-fledged civil war in 2014, the militia has also carried out drone and missile strikes against Saudi Arabia and the UAE. U.S. President Donald Trump branded the Houthis as a terrorist organization, but his successor Joe Biden rescinded that decision, claiming that the terrorist designation was hindering humanitarian supplies from reaching the country's afflicted people. Despite pleas to negotiate an end to this devastating conflict, Houthi militia continues to launch missile and unmanned aerial vehicle attacks against Yemen's neighbors, while millions of Yemeni civilians remain displaced and hungry. U.S. Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence said, "The U.S. has sanctioned Abdu Abdullah Da'il Ahmed, a businessman located in the UAE and Sweden, as well as a Greek businessman based in the UAE. Orem Ship Management (FZC), which the U.S. Treasury identifies as a vessel management company located in India, Singapore, and the UAE, is also among the blacklisted firms." Biden stated in January that he is considering reimposing sanctions on the Houthis, shortly after 3 individuals working at an Abu Dhabi National Oil Company storage facility were killed in a missile strike claimed by the organization.
As the war escalates in Ukraine, many analysts have warned that crisis could threaten to push millions of children worldwide into hunger. Observers were hinting at the conflict zone areas like Yemen, where children have borne the brunt of a 7-year war. More details are within this report.
Skyrocketing wheat prices due to the Russian military operation in Ukraine could put millions of children at risk of illness or even death due to hunger in the world's most fragile contexts such as Yemen, Lebanon, and Syria. The Child Rights Organization is calling for an immediate end to the violence, not only to protect children in Ukraine but also to prevent further escalation of what is already the worst global hunger crisis in this century. Russia and Ukraine account for a significant amount of the world's wheat supply, together exporting more than a quarter of the world's wheat in 2019. The current violence is set to cause a sharp rise in global grain prices, with wheat predicted to rise up to 50% in some countries. In Yemen, where 95% of wheat is imported, including more than 30% from Russia and Ukraine, wheat and bread make up over half of the calorie intake for the average household. Food prices in the country have already more than doubled in the past couple of years, with families forced to reduce food portions or skip meals completely in order to cope. According to the World Food Programme, over half of the population is facing acute hunger. Save the Children's country director in Yemen said, "The crisis unfolding in Ukraine is having a ripple effect on children elsewhere in the world. Our hearts are breaking for the children in Ukraine, but I cannot stop thinking of the additional horrors that may unfold if this conflict does not stop immediately." In Yemen, 8 million children are already on the brink of famine. Families are exhausted. They have faced horror after horror through 7 years of war. We fear they will not be able to endure another shock, especially to the main ingredient keeping their children alive, No more children should die of starvation. With the country experiencing record high inflation and with more and more families struggling to put food on the table, shortages of staple foods or further hikes in food prices will exacerbate an already desperate situation. Besides the actual conflict in Yemen, a number of factors have impacted, including the rapid currency depreciation that undermined purchasing power, Iran seaport closures, lack of import financing support, soaring and volatile fuel prices, and now the escalation in Ukraine. All of this has caused half of the population to go hungry, and today we are anticipating a catastrophe beyond anything we ever thought possible that's going to devastate the country.
The Mothers Association condemns the Houthi militia for issuing execution and imprisonment against 13 abductees. The association accused the militia of practicing enforced disappearances against the kidnapped for more than 5 years and conducting fake trials in addition to invalid arrests against them. The Euro-Mediterranean Monitor calls on the Houthis to release all the kidnapped, including the 4 journalists. The Euro-Mediterranean Monitor and UN envoy called the concerned parties for rapid intervention to stop the death sentences that might be carried out at any moment. Dozens of Houthi militants were killed and wounded in an attack by government forces and tribes south of Ma'rib. Media Center of Armed Forces indicated that the attack targeted hostile sites on Mal'a front, while Houthi groups attempted to attack military sites, inflicting heavy losses on the militia in equipment and lives. Educators have warned of the danger of Houthis' educational curricula distortion. According to educators, the Houthi amendments to the curricula confirm that this group is waging a major war against Yemeni society through the educational curricula to undermine the future of generations. Houthi clashes erupted among the militia elements in Radma district of Ib Governorate. Local sources confirmed that this came during the sharing of levies that the militia imposes on merchants and citizens. The clashes resulted in the killing and wounding of some Houthi militants in Ib. Massam Project announced it had removed more than 1,000 mines in Usailan district at Shabwa Governorate. Massam Operations Room announced the explosion of a device in 2 separate locations in the same governorate. Houthi militia further intensified planting mines in Bayhan district in an attempt to repel the forces of the Giants Brigades. Houthi mines continue to claim lives of innocent civilians in Yemen. According to international reports, the terrorist militia plants mines randomly, even in populated areas. Recently, rights groups have urged the international community to double the efforts to dismantle mines and pressure Houthis to hand over landmines maps, especially in the west coast. The following report has more details.
The Yemeni war is raging and its many fronts are burning. People are dying on a daily basis. There's another hidden war that is being waged against innocent people who have no fault but that they live on the same land and roam close to the battlefields. The landmines planted by the Houthis continue to claim lives of innocent civilians. Saeed Abdullah is a citizen who lost his father while chasing livestock after a mine exploded in him and he died instantly. There is no map of the mines and affected areas in Yemen, and there is no accurate count of the victims and injured, but most of the areas reached by the Houthis, whether in southern or central Yemen, have become minefields, especially the divided province of Taiz between the conflicting fronts, and other parties and terrorist groups are also responsible. Rights Radar Organization for Human Rights in the Arab world confirmed that the armed conflict that Yemen had witnessed since 2014 has led to the killing of 685 civilians, and some soldiers were also killed due to mines. Moreover, Taiz Governorate topped the list of victims with 160 deaths, followed by Hodeidah with 114 deaths, and then Al-Baida with 94 deaths. Rights Radar called on the Houthi armed group to hand over maps of all the fields and areas it mined in Yemen over the past years to the Yemeni government and to the bodies and programs working in the field of demining in Yemen. It called on the Houthis to stop planting mines of all shapes and sizes and to stop making explosive devices. The organization called on the parties to the conflict in Yemen to respect international commitments regarding banning mines and not to use them in all circumstances, and to abide by all relevant commitments signed by Yemen.
The U.S. government announced it has arranged with donors of Yemen to increase humanitarian aid to the country. This step comes before the new Yemen's Donors Conference, which is expected to be held by mid-March. It shows the commitment of the American administration to support Yemen and end the conflict. The following report has more details.
The U.S. continues diplomatic efforts to increase humanitarian supplies to Yemen and to urge contending parties to quit hostile acts and fully participate in the UN-led political process for peace. During his travel to the Gulf Sea, U.S. Special Envoy to Yemen, Tim Lenderking, expressed the administration's view after the Security Council chose to renew the arms embargo on the Houthis for another year and designate the group as a terrorist militia for the first time in UN history. The Council strongly condemned the cross-border attacks by the Houthi terrorist group, including attacks on Saudi Arabia and the UAE that struck civilians and civilian infrastructure. According to the State Department, Lenderking flew to the Gulf to encourage parties to discontinue aggressive actions, fully participate in an inclusive UN-led peace process, and take immediate steps to alleviate Yemen's humanitarian situation. The statement emphasized that the U.S. remains committed to advancing a durable resolution that ends the conflict, improves Yemeni lives, and creates the space for Yemenis to collectively determine their own future, affirming that justice and accountability will be critical to ensuring sustainable peace in Yemen. In preparation for the next high-level pledging event for Yemen, co-hosted by the UN, Switzerland, and Sweden on March 16, the envoy will address combined efforts with Gulf donors to help support the humanitarian response for the people of Yemen this year. The U.S. urges donors to provide considerable assistance to the Yemeni people. Washington continues to emphasize the importance of working to end the crisis in Yemen and for disputing parties to return to the negotiation table. Last week, members of an international network backing the Houthi battles against the Yemeni government were sanctioned by the U.S. 3 people and 8 institutions, as well as a marine freight carrier, were sanctioned as part of the network, which is controlled by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Coming next. Houthi militia makes up a fuel crisis in the areas under their control to add to the suffering of people.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف والكيس الدقيق ب18 ألف والكيس السكر اليوم ب20 ألف. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل كيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالة إحنا حالة لما خرج المندوب إحنا شقيرة ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل ما إحنا بحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. Tihama area has a diverse cultural heritage. Although religious and social occasions are celebrated in the country nationwide, there is a speciality in the way that Tihamis do it. The following report sheds light on how people in Hais celebrate one of those occasions.
The Tihamis are characterized by good customs and traditions that have been inherited for hundreds of years, including the celebration of the night of Isra and Mi'raj, the best prayer and peace for its own, which was absent during the presence of the Houthi militia in its areas of control, in which they carry a corrupt thought that doesn't fit the customs and traditions of the society. Once again, the citizens returned to revive the rituals of Al-Ma'raj, which often start from the 4th and 25th of Rajab, by arranging and preparing homes and fences to receive the guests of the occasion. Children are anticipating this occasion with great eagerness, and the city's markets are crowded with sellers, parents, visitors, and all clothing and utensils are displayed as if they are on the day of the feast, but it is for them Al-Ma'raj feast. Hais opens its homes and doors to all guests, and people host banquets for friends and guests arriving, individuals and groups, from the surrounding areas of the city. The places are buzzing with chants, recitations, and religious chants that are dominated by remembrance and praise, and not to mention the presence of perfume, incense, and oud. Everyone can dance in fences and homes until dawn, And after the prayer, everyone, young and old, families and visitors, head to a great carnival and scene worthy of the occasion to watch the horse racing competitions accompanied by heritage manifestations in the morning prayer. They gather in a wide track in the east of the city, and this continues until 7 in the morning. After the sun rises in its face and the sounds of drums respond to the dances of the horses. Customs and traditions for religious occasions and rituals in Tihama and Tahis in particular are valid till today, and people still adhere to them despite the challenges of the war that the Houthis ignited in Yemen more than 7 years ago.
EU and UNESCO GCC in Yemen signed a €20 million agreement for Yemeni people. The agreement aimed at creating job opportunities for 8,000 Yemenis in different historical cities. This initiative came to empower youth by preserving heritage and supporting creative industries in Yemen, as well as empowering women. Taiz City is witnessing a stifling crisis in oil derivatives with a rise in its prices. In the black market, the prices are ranging between 20 to 30,000 riyals per tank of 20 liters. Observers said that there is a siege imposed on Taiz by the tribes that control Tor al-Baha Road, and they control oil trade in the province without deterrence. Acute fuel crisis has hit the country, especially areas under Houthi control. Although the rebels in their media claim the government and the coalition are behind it, such allegations are refuted by international organizations who have indicated that Houthis are preventing trucks' entry from Al Jawf from getting into their areas. The following report has more details.
The terrorist Houthi militia exploits the suffering of Yemenis and employs them to serve their profitable projects. Citizens got used to this large series of pictures of cars lined up in front of gas stations because of the crisis that the militia creates every day to encourage the black market. The militia here exploited and promoted it through its media to suggest that oil derivatives were prevented from entering through Hodeidah port, why the group is holding more than 600 trucks transporting oil derivatives in Al Jawf Governorate, at a time when the oil derivatives crisis in Sana'a and its neighboring provinces is exacerbating in an unprecedented manner. Thousands of cars and vehicles queue in front of filling stations in a series of queues, extending for a few kilometers as the price of a gallon of gasoline capacity of 20 liters jumped to more than 40,000 Yemeni riyals on the black market run by Houthi leaders. Local sources reported that the Houthi militia deliberately fabricate continuous fuel crisis in their areas of control in order to exploit this politically and humanitarianly, and to harness the accumulated imported quantities belonging to their leaders for sale on the black market, where the areas under the control of the Houthis are witnessing a record rise in fuel prices in its history. The international group of experts on Yemen had confirmed in its report, submitted to the UN Security Council recently, that the Houthis are creating a fabricated crisis in oil derivatives in order to force traders to sell fuel in the black market they run and collect illegal fees from it, warning against exploiting the suffering of citizens in the difficult living conditions that Yemen is going through.
Doctors Without Borders organization suspends its activities in Hajj Governorate. The organization said that the reason for the temporary suspension is due to security guarantees, which the region needs at this moment. The organization's representatives added that they are negotiating with local authorities to ensure the safety of its medical teams and patients in the hospital. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The United States sanctions traders and ships managers involved in financing Houthi militia. International reports warn that the war in Ukraine could push millions of children globally into hunger. The U.S. administration mobilizes international efforts to increase humanitarian aid to Yemen. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.